This episode of the Rainbow Brainskull podcast is brought to you by the Infinite Elephants Kickstarter page. If you go to rainbowbrainskull.com and click on the link for the Infinite Elephants Kickstarter page book, you can help support a book that I'm writing, and then I won't do this accent anymore during the beginning. No, I'll still do it, but I won't do the accent during the rest of the podcast, just during this part. Oh no, I shouldn't have done this for the second episode. That's alright. Hit it! Welcome to the Rainbow Brainskull Hour. You're gonna have a good real time today. Every week there's a new guest, so that you'll learn something new. That's all that we're here to do. No, I mean, we just go into it, just Mark Maron style. I don't know if he invented it, that style, but that's what I'm calling it, just Mark Maron style. Maybe as this evolves, it's going to become more. But today, with me right now, is Myq Kaplan, my good friend, someone enjoys work as well, and it's rare to like both nowadays. You gotta not like the work or the
art
person.
And the artist.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Myq is a comedian and is a comedian, and he's also has a podcast that's very good.
Oh,
and
sure. Thank you.
His last name is Kaplan, and that's all. Then the thing, and that's a fantastic introduction.
Oh yeah, I call that Ramin style.
Yeah, it's going to be a really popular style. There's going to be AIs that imitate it, much like Morgan Freeman is in a lot of cars. That's going to be a style of intro.
That makes sense. And did you know that if you take away all of the consonants in your name, then all that remains is AI?
Oh, wow. What about the last name?
AE.
Aye.
Aye.
Because first you realize it's AI, and then aye.
Oh yeah, it's also like that movie Titan AE. Those are the same, almost exactly the same letters in vowel-wise, but not in the same order as your. If you remove all the consonants of Titan AE, you've got IA AE, as opposed to AIAE. That's you.
I haven't seen Titan. Is it about the big...
It's not important.
Is it about big people? Let's make the whole podcast about it.
Okay. It's about, I think, people in search of a planet, if I remember correctly.
Oh, it sounds great. My new favorite movie. Well,
thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming all the way out here to the Rainbow Brainskull Studios.
Happy to.
Came up all the stairs.
Always
parked.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I had all this. Let's see. What was I going to ask you? I wrote
ideas.
down questions because you can't just trust yourself for it to flow, because maybe I'm in a more not talky mood, and maybe you're not in a not talky mood, and both of us know each other well enough to sit in silence for extended periods of time without feeling like the other one is burdened.
Oh yeah, we would be very comfortable, and I imagine that your podcast listeners would also be comfortable. But we don't have to. If you want to sit in silence, feel free to pause it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And actually, Zach's episode, we actually did have 10 seconds of silence, but it was at the end. So let's just do it. Let's just do it now, just to change it up. All right,
sure.
Let's go.
That was nice.
Yeah, I think the listener at home is going to enjoy the thing. But yeah, I really want to do a podcast. I've tried to do this podcast for over a year. I taped the episode with Zach, didn't become anything because I didn't upload it because I didn't want to do the tasks to make the thing. But just more and more people, I think, are, at least I am, enjoying audio because we're just busier, and with audio you can do other stuff instead of like a film. You have to watch the film and listen to the film, but audio, you can have it wherever you go. And yeah, I want this to be the best podcast it can be. Not in the world, because then it has to be like serial, and I don't want to talk about one thing.
No, it's like yourself. You are going to be the best you, or the most you. You're going to be the you-iest you. Do you know...
It sounds gluey and sticky, doesn't it?
Yeah, the gluiest glue.
the you-iest you.
Ugh. It does sound like ew, yeah. But do you know... Have you heard of the Rabbi Zusia?
No, I haven't.
Zach told me about this fellow, a Talmudic scholar or a Talmudic subject, perhaps, that he said something like this, that when he died, he's like, when I die, I do not worry that God will judge me by saying, why weren't you more like Abraham? Why weren't you more like Moses? He says, I'm worried that God will be like, why weren't you more like Zeusia?
Yeah.
So that's why, like, Zeusia's podcast is the best that Zeusia's podcast can be. And yours is the best that yours can be. And they don't have to compete with each other.
Yeah, so, like, really, I don't have to try. I can just make sounds or bodily function noises such as and
it's definitely true. And even the thing that I like about, when people, it's very simple to look at other people and see what they're doing and be like, oh man, I could be doing that, I should be doing that, why am I not doing that? But in fact, they're being them and we're being ourselves, and so the person that it makes most sense to look at and compare yourself to is yourself from the past, and you're almost always in some way ahead of that person.
Always.
Yeah.
You can't not be, because it's, even if you lose a thing, it's kind of like in a role-playing game, if you lose your ship to go to the other island to do those activities, you
have to.
You have to. It's part of the thing, and not to be nihilistic, determinist, but it kind of is. It kind of is determinist.
Certainly, everything that you have experienced in the past, that's my one of my ways that I look at fate is that fate definitely applies backwards. So, like, you right now, did that have to happen? Well, it did happen. So that's why I think, like, marriage vows shouldn't be, do you promise the future? It should be like, I've definitely loved you so far. I loved you in the beginning when I started loving you, and then right after that, and after that, and after that, like, for every day from the beginning of love till now, every moment, every second, infinite love. Like, so I promise you the past. I can definitely guarantee you the past till now. Everything that's happened did happen, and you can't make it go away, and I can't make it go away. It is here. It was here, and it's part of us. And I hope that my goal is for it to continue to move forward, trajectory wise. It seems like we're on a positive trajectory. Like, I definitely don't know anything about it. And the same thing about, like, getting into comedy. Ooh.
That was important word. That was timed.
It was nice.
It definitely feels like it. And then Sign from the Universe, the uplifting tone of the Macintosh.
A universe. That's what I say.
There totally is. There's, like, I have, in this room alone, I have, like, over 60 billion different cases of proof as to why there is something that exists.
I accept. In comedy, similar to the love, marriage, fate analogy, or this will be an analogy now, is I remember when I first started doing comedy, the goal was to be a quote-unquote professional comedian, make my money from comedy and hopefully not anything else. And then the way that I eventually got to that point, where that is what has been happening and is still happening, and I hope keeps happening, though obviously it's not like the be-all, end-all. I wouldn't, murder somebody to keep it happening and all kinds of other things. There's many more important things than only making your money from comedy. But if somebody asked me, how did you do it? What was the path to doing this? I was like, for me, I did all the shows that I could, and I went to Seattle and did this competition in 2006 when I'd been doing comedy for 4 years, and I had, like, a good, 15 to 30 minutes of comedy, and then probably lots more comedy that wasn't as good, but I thought it was. And I was in this competition with people like Rory Scovel, and that was the first time I saw him, and it was great. And we were, his manager was there, and she saw me, and she was running a festival the next year in Washington, D.C., and so I was invited to do that festival. And at that festival, a person who would become my college booking agent saw me do 5 to 7 minutes. That was good, and they were like, we'll book you to go to colleges if you'd like, and the colleges pay money. And that was the first year that I ever did comedy, and nothing else, was that I made enough money from colleges that person had booked me for. And so I'm like, well, that's, looking backwards, I can trace exactly how it happened, but there's no way that anybody can be like, okay, so here's how, those can't be like a map forward. It's only a map backwards, because forward, there's like 1,000 pathways. Have you seen Plinko? It's a Price is Right game. Have you ever watched The Price is Right?
It sounds like a Soviet derogatory term of game shows. No, I haven't seen it. Is it old, like from the 70s?
I mean, however long it's been around, I think it still exists. I definitely saw it growing up. in the 80s, and my grandmother has watched The Price is Right for years and years.
Iris.
Yes.
Right?
That's
I
correct.
can name her, right?
Oh, you may. Yeah, she's on Facebook publicly.
Yeah. And the last name isn't Kaplan, so you can't find it.
Yeah.
Oh, what if I tip them off and there's only one other?
That's fine.
I just mentioned this the other day with Zach, but when I'm speaking to not you, when I'm speaking to the audience, I have this tick of I have to look at the screen as if the audience is in there, but they're not in there. That's just the machine that tapes the stuff.
It's a representation.
Yeah.
So the game of Plinko is there's like a big sort of, you've probably seen a thing like it. Imagine like on the wall if there were like pegs, like maybe, just like 10 rows of pegs that are sort of like staggered, and then there's like a disc, like a puck that you drop in from the top, and then it like bounces all around, and then at the bottom there's different goal units, goal places for it to land, and you want it to land in the one that has the most money. But there's like all different kinds. There's like you lose, and then there's ones that are like you only win like $1 or $10.
Is the highest prize located towards the edges?
I don't remember. I think there might be like ones at the edges, but also in the middle. But like there's no way, unless you have like a perfect robotic, physics mind, to be like, well, if I drop this here, then it'll. But so you can only know once it lands, be like, oh, that's the path that it did follow. You can't be like, well, here's how I'm going to make it do that path. Like you can't see somebody else do it perfectly and get it where you want it and be like, well, now I'm going to follow their comedy career, relationship, romance, marriage, success. You can't follow somebody else's path and end up where they ended up because you're not them.
I was just thinking about this concept in terms of horse. With basketball, when you play horse,
yes.
Part of the rules of horse is you can't like just do a crazy thing and then the other person has to imitate it, unless I'm getting the rules wrong. I like it this way better, but the point of that is anyone can do a crazy thing and then make a shot, but you have to plan it out, kind of like in billiards also. You have to call your shot.
Yes.
And if you're imitating someone else, you're having to do a lot of complex stuff that wasn't in your control, whereas if you just express yourself, like let's say in a guitar solo or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that feels like a loose analogy, but I'm getting it.
I accept.
Yes!
Yeah.
Mike's the easy teacher.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that to be fair, you just reminded me of two different teachers that I had in college, both of whom I liked, but both of whom did things in ways that are different. And if I were going to be a teacher, which I am sometimes, I strive to be more like the other teacher, not the kind that I just was. So one of them was named Professor Wong, and he taught me Chinese philosophy and ethics, other philosophy things too, maybe. And he was a nice, smart guy. But I also remember the way. So he was sort of the looser teacher in that he would ask a question, and sometimes a student would be like, "Is it this?" And they would say something that was vague and not nonsense, but the teacher would be like, okay. And like, maybe by that you mean, and he would like, instead of drawing it out of them, he would like make a connection. He would accept. Which is, I think, what I'm doing here is being an accepting friend. But the other teacher that I had, Professor O'Connor, she was like, if I said something that didn't really make sense, or that I was just like, these are the things.
An idiot.
She would be like, I don't really understand. Can you explain it more? Like, she was like not trying to shame anyone, but she was like, maybe I'm the person who's not getting it. Can you? And she'd be like, can you explain it better? I'm like, oh no, there's nothing to explain better. I hope that would just be the answer, and you would run with it. I hope that you would help me. Which is also sometimes how I start doing like some comedy bits. Like I have something that I'm like, I think there's something here, and then like audience, and if they're like, I'm like, oh no, so that wasn't enough. I need to do more work.
That's where some great tags come from, out of just not feeling like the thing you just said is good enough.
Definitely.
And when we talk, for the most part, it is all freestyling. Like, we're not trying to rhyme, but no one thinks out what they're going to say before they say it. It's such a freestyle of...
Oh, yeah. We are freestyling life almost at every moment, though every once in a while, like right a moment ago when you said teacher, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of 2 teacher stories or 1 teacher story that I have. And that's like almost like going into prepared material or a written a written rap, but also fitting it in, hopefully, reasonably. Though I feel like sometimes people, and sometimes I'll include myself because I am a person, you hear one word and then you free associate and you're like, oh, I'll tell this story.
Yeah.
And then you're like, because it has a word in common. And then people are like, and why did you tell that story? You're like, well, I think it's just because of that one word, and my apologies. So
Does that happen with you and in relationships a lot? Because when it's with someone you trust a lot, like you say a thing, like you go on a story that has nothing to do with what was talking about just because of a word.
I think that, with my primary partner, girlfriend, relationship person right now, whose name is the same as your girlfriend's, she and I...
He's referring to one girlfriend, in case anyone is confused about that, in
Oh,
case
yeah.
I'm dating multiple Catherines.
It's true. I'm dating one Catherine, you're dating one Catherine.
Yeah.
And so my Catherine and I, mine...
Myq Kaplan.
Yeah, Myq Kaplan. I'm thinking of taking her name. She and I, like, if there's a time when I sense that that's happening, if I start telling her a story and she's like... she would never be like, why are you telling me this story? But if I realize in the middle of it, like, why am I telling you this story? Then I think it's just important and valuable to own that and be like, I had a reason, I thought, but as it turns out, I'm just telling you this story. Sometimes you tell somebody a story because you want to. Sometimes it's because there was some reason beyond that. And I think it's just, it can be helpful to yourself and your partner, or any conversational partner even, to be aware of which one it is. Like, sometimes, like when I talk with Zach, we'll have sort of a convention where if, like, say we don't want to just like brag about ourselves if like a good thing happened, but we also want to share when a good thing happens. So we'll sort of set the expectation and be like, hey, can I tell you a story of a clever thing I said last night on stage, just to get out ahead why I'm telling you that? Because normally the assumption will be, if I'm telling you something, it sort of reminds me of the Instagram cartoon that you posted today, where I'm going to paraphrase something like, I hope I'm being helpful, and not just doing the me thing. And, for me, I'll say, number one, you're definitely helping.
Yes! Providing value, and just got to do it long term.
And so that's the goal. For a lot of us, there's like a yin-yang of, hopefully being like, will this me thing help? Like, all we have is access to our me, all we have access to is our me things. And then we can think and hope that they'll bring value, but also, oh, I brought value. That's another me thing. So it's kind of like, focusing on the process instead of the product is the only thing that we can, not the only thing that we can do, but it's a thing that we can do. And then hopefully later people are like, that thing was helpful. Like, even just, worrying about this possible selfishness is probably valuable to people who are like, I worry about possible selfishness. Me.
Yeah.
And so the goal that, Zach and I have when we talk is to share valuable, helpful things, either, things about our experience to fill in the other one about what is important and going on at the moment, or something that we think could be, of value just in general, and hey, I learned something and I'm going to share it with you, so that now you have that experience and we both have it. And so that's why it's noteworthy when, not that it doesn't happen, not that it's the rarest thing to happen, but that the default is assuming that we're trying to be constructive and productive and fulfilling and self-aware and, as humble as possible and like just... and so if there's a thing that's not that, then we'll be like, let me just get out ahead of that one. Or if we tell the story and then we're like, oh, I guess that one just turned out to be a story that was about a funny thing that I said. And there's nothing wrong with that other than we want to own that. Or if it's like, sometimes we have a thing where do you ever read The Week magazine?
No.
It's like
not Time Week. That's not a magazine.
No.
Newsweek. That's still a magazine.
Oh,
but
yeah.
No, what's The Week?
The Week is a magazine that Zach and I have read for some time, which basically conglomerates all the news for the week. Like, it'll be like, here's the major story, here's what this newspaper said about it, here's what this newspaper said about it. Like, here's what the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, here's what editorial said, here's what columnists said. And then they sort of, like, do a roundup of their own. They summarize at the end. They're like, and here's kind of what we think, our editorial position. And they'll do that for, like, world news, U.S. news, like one page of, like, celebrity news, one page of science news, one page of business news, all kinds of, one page of, like, U.S. culture, one page of, like, around the world, different countries. And there's one segment on one of the pages that says something like, boring but important. And it'll say something usually about, like, the U.S. government having done something, or some, something that, maybe people don't care about.
Is net neutrality, do you consider that boring? Not right now, because obviously at the time it's going. The reason I ask that is because when I always try to see what is the other side of the argument. What I know about net neutrality is, of course, that one image where it shows the different services being broken down by, you'll have to pay $5.99 a month, and it'll be like in Korea, and all these types of arguments. And I haven't heard a way of it playing out better. I guess that means it's a flawed concept, probably. But
yes, I also feel that way, and I would say that I don't think that most things are boring, or that anything is inherently boring, but this is a category of a thing that probably could be in the week's segment of boring but important.
Yeah, it's not boring now because everyone is talking about it, and the information has been condensed into more digestible form. But if you were just to read the legislation that they proposed, you'd be like, yes, good sure. For internet because you said so?
Yes. And the reason I brought up the topic of boring but important is, hopefully interesting, that sometimes Zach and I will have those things come up as well, like in our own lives, which could be, for us, like, I was looking for a flight, and I thought it was going to be this situation, like, but I found one connecting through a better place than and we feel good about something that was important. It was important to us that we did it, but to most people, they wouldn't care, that we saved $50 or, 3 hours or what, so something was different than we thought it was going to be, and I'm happy.
That's true friendship, being able to share mundane shit with the other person.
And I think that a thing that really helps is obviously caring about the person, but then giving them a heads up that it is, if your story isn't just going to be, this is actually a new analogy that I hadn't thought of before right now, but I have this thing where I think it's good to, and I might talk about this in comedy in the future, I think it's, if there's big things and there's little things, there's good things and there's bad things, let's just say, to oversimplify, I think it's valuable to talk about the big bad things and the little good things.
Yeah.
Because I think the big good things might seem like bragging, and the little good things are like things that we all could have. Be like, oh, I found a penny and it made me feel good. Or, a person.
I want to meet that person. That's not you, is it?
Oh, no. Okay. It does make me feel good.
To find a penny?
Yeah, seeing a penny, it doesn't mean that I'm going to pick it up. Sometimes I do. But, like, it makes me think about my friend Liz Glazer, who has...
Shout out to Liz Glazer.
Oh, yeah. She has a thing
Even though you just did by calling her Liz Glazer.
Penny Project on Instagram, where she picks up coins whenever she sees them. She takes a picture of them. And so even just seeing a penny now or a coin on the ground makes me think of her, and she's my friend, and that... So that's a nice little thing.
Is that her whole account?
She has, I think, another account that isn't that, but that is one whole account.
You've heard of the paperclip guy, right? There's this guy that had a red paperclip on his desk, and he traded it to someone for a pen. And then he traded that pen for, I don't remember, like, let's say a yo-yo.
Oh,
then
wow.
he traded it for, like, a pencil case. Basically,
increasing in value?
Yeah, he started with a paperclip and ended up with a house, and he documented the journey.
Oh, my God.
The journey. And, of course, he does say towards the end that the fame resulting in it is what was being traded because people had caught the attention. But the first half before the house is totally like just legit how quickly you can double.
That's really interesting.
Fibonacci or sequence. Is that the same kind of... Yeah, basically the
similar
exponential growth.
Wow. So yeah, this is, a penny is worth almost nothing, but the joy that I can now get from a penny is greater than nothing for sure. And so that's a little, or like today, I was walking just through Los Angeles, and I smiled at a few people on the street, and like a few people and smiled back, and like one guy was like, "Hey, how are you?" And so that's a thing that
Did they all smile back?
I think there was, on that stretch of road, there was only like 3 people, and I think they all did smile back.
Oh, that's good. Especially for out here.
Yes.
Here's, what is it, 80-20 hit and run ratio or something.
Sure.
Or no, sorry, I think it's 50-50. I need to look it up.
No worries.
And it's just fresh info in my head. Did you give them a teeth smile or just regular?
I think...
Like, give me the smile right now, best of your ability.
I think I gave a little teeth.
Yeah, that's a good one. Not too imposing, not too...
Yeah. And it was all dudes. Like, I don't strive to, I think it's more complex to smile
at a woman. It's just there's too much weight behind it.
There's
too much going on.
Yeah.
It's, this is why we can't have nice things sort of thing. And did you, I didn't get to see it, but it was last time Zach came over. Did you get into a... Not fight, because fight implies you're attacking the other person, but was someone being a hater on something because of something you said about women? What's the thing? Have you talked about that already?
Not extensively.
Yeah, you don't have to. You don't want to.
I'm
but
happy
also,
to.
It's you made it weird, and also I want to do another thing, or it's you made it normal, and it's like something that just brings it to really mundaneness, which maybe the penny is that. No, I don't think it is. But anyway,
I understand.
What was it? Just a normal hater calling you a snowflake or something? One of those. Types
it was
of
that
people?
kind of thing, but it got more complex in that. So I posted something around when a lot of men were being a lot of women were coming forward and telling their stories about men doing damaging things. And so I posted a tweet and to Facebook and Instagram that was something like, here's what I like to do to women, and then a list of things that was listen to them, respect them, be their friends, treat them the way they want to be treated, hire them,
Do you know what it is? I think that because I remember that tweet or image or whatever platform I saw it on now, but I think that because text so much is lost on tone,
of
like
course.
the tone of that, if it's not read with that like intro of like, I like my coffee like I like my women, and then you say something that you wouldn't expect, like, here's what I like to do to women.
Yes, and so I do understand that is part obviously. Especially if it's getting shared widely, there's more and more people seeing it who don't know who I am, what my intentions are, plus not having the tone or like there's certain people who. So the only clue that there is that tone there is here's what I like to do to women, which is perhaps a subtle, But then there's some people who don't know me who are like, that's what you like to do to women, like women are objects, and that's part of the whole point of what I'm saying. But also I was, and the context of me responding in sort of real time to this is what other people are doing to women, at women, with women, not for women, about women, around women. I did want it to be like also sincere. Like this is the sincere way that I feel. And so it was shared at least by one person who didn't like it and, sort of put something disparaging with it.
On Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, no, yeah, Twitter's the cesspool.
And so, I mean, I did gain, like, hundreds of followers because of the whole thing, but many hundreds of people, like, wrote mean things from, like, calling me gay and, in less nice ways than just saying, you are gay.
It always is gay. I put I'm so stupid today, but that's okay. The image of, have you seen that image I did where it's not happening as fast as you want, but it is happening, and it starts at the castle, and there's a kind of pollution-y city, and then it's the future city, and I don't know, I like to put colors and stuff, and I just draw whatever shapes, and because it took off, it got so much... like what? Are we supposed to live in some kind of fag utopia now? Like,
my God.
What is, like, they always find a way to make it like, oh yeah, a libtard utopia. And like, I didn't say anything about any, like, that could be a conservative future where you're only allowed to wear suits and only like Ronald Reagan and whatever things. You can keep your guns and
men don't like colors.
They don't. Well, it goes back to kind of like Bill Burr's joke of like your whole, or too many comics have this kind of joke, but just specifically Bill Burr's, your men die quicker because there's so much time spent trying to prove you're not gay, that you don't have feelings, and like that the fact that the two are even like if you're attracted to men, you also have feelings.
Oh yeah.
But
and that sort of goes back to the thing we were talking about at the beginning, where like the idea of being a man or being a real man, like that isn't, if you are a man, then be a man. And you are the man that you are, but there's no, one size fits all rules for how to be, a self or a gender or wherever you are on whatever spectrums of, sexuality, of gender, of presentation, of, trans or cis nature, of all the non-binary situations. And so it's really interesting, like when, I have like a joke that's something like, when I used to drink like amaretto sours a lot, or now I drink like wine sometimes, and people are like, those are, not manly things to drink. And I'm like, sincerely, like, in your construct of like what a man is, like, wouldn't a man drink whatever a man wants to drink? Like, why is a man so constricted and confined by a man can't make his own choices? A man has to only pick these man things from this man checklist. But yeah, so that was a thing that people called me, not a man or less of a man, or there was some more nuanced, like, hey, that's just virtue signaling and you're just trying to get laid and that's not the right way to do things, and or you're probably a creepy, sexual harasser or assaulter yourself, because that's the kind of thing that they would say to try to hide, which, granted, for sure, there's definitely...
if you not just look necessarily, but it definitely is the case a lot of times.
If you look at one sentence, that, and you don't know who's saying it or what the context is, yeah, it could be somebody lying, trying to hide, or it could be somebody being sincere, trying to demonstrate who they actually are. And so, yeah, that happened, and it wasn't my favorite thing.
But I mean, it's done after the day is over because our attention spans are so short. So no matter what you do, we're on to the next thing the next day. But as an impact on you, did it make you feel like, well, I guess next time I won't do stuff like that? Or did it build a thicker skin where it's like, well, next time that happens, it's just going to be this stimulus again. And that stimulus is, I've heard that joke before. I've heard that insult before. I've heard that angle of insulting before, so it doesn't affect me anymore. So it's like this open mic of, it's a new type of, because if you get a heckle or something, or they're not laughing, that's felt in the moment and you kind of go away from it. But when we're looking at a screen with the symbols that represent meaning of hatred to us, it's like we're still getting used to it. Didn't Richard Jeni kill himself because he didn't like people making fun of him on YouTube or something?
I guess I don't know that story.
Not to minimize it, but
probably
I think
there's more complex. I feel like he was struggling with mental health issues and depression and suicidality. There must have been more. I can't say. I definitely don't have the answer. But I'm curious now.
Oh, I thought you had the answer.
No, I definitely
and it's okay because
don't.
I like any of these things I say, like, because if he didn't kill himself and he's still alive, and I'm thinking of a different bloke.
Oh,
so
no,
to
he
say.
Definitely did.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. I mean, not good, but good that I got it right. And and it's probably been enough time. He's off doing non-physical form things, or is in a separate physical form that we don't know, or is being in an oblivion to be called back into existence, which would appear seamless as him.
Oh yeah,
for the next one.
The form and function, the matter and energy that we knew in this realm, dimension, world, manifestation as Richard Jeni is no more. So it seems like he was suffering, and now he is not suffering.
Yeah.
That's definitely, regardless of what you believe. I mean, I guess some people believe that if you kill yourself, then you go to hell and you are suffering, but that doesn't seem right to me. I think
it doesn't seem balanced, and there must be balance in order for there to be anything at all, because it's like we're borrowing from non-existence, so there has to be existence.
I like that. Yeah. So there is no current suffering Richard Jeni.
Yeah, unless there's a new dimension of suffering he's in.
Yes, that could be. But I think that he's probably not Richard Jenny there.
Yeah, it's probably like Rick. It's more relaxed up there. There's a comic from Austin. He had a good joke about how, you know, you try really hard in high school, and then you get to college, like, you know, those grades they told you were really important, those don't matter. This is what's really important. And then you leave college, like, jobs, like, no one cares about your grades. And it's like, is that going to happen after death? Like, oh, life? No one gives a shit what you did in life. It's different. And that could be fractal. And I love thinking about fractal everything, because fractal universe implies that as above, so below. So if I smile and stick my thumb out like this, if you zoom out enough, you will see a large entity doing this exact same motion.
I like that a lot.
From this point. If you go far enough, it does it forever like this. Now, you could not be limited to that form. It could also be this one. Zooming up, it goes to a giant one. Like, you think, you know, that's something
What's the phrase? As below,
as above, so below.
And is it also as below, so above? Or Great.
Yeah, you are the information boundary transfer point between the infinitely big and the infinitely small.
Have you heard of holons?
Holons? Is it like the opposite of...
No, it's one word, HOLON.
Like a holographic unit of something, right? A holon?
I don't know enough about it, but my girlfriend has been telling me about them. And it's essentially, if I can try to capture it, it's basically like what you just said. Like, there's, you know, a giant version, and there's like, then also if you went farther down the other direction, like a tiny version, or like infinite tiny versions and infinite giant versions. Like, the fact that if you break, you know, if you go down, there's always something smaller. There's always a smaller unit than, you know, a person, a body, a brain, a cell, an atom. There's subatomic particles smaller than we can see. There must be, like, it just keeps going down, down, down. And like a holon is a thing that I believe is just like, there's always smaller holons and bigger holons. It's like turtles all the way up and turtles all the way down. It's just like, it's holons all the way up and holons all the way down that, you know, we make a society, we make a country, a world, a solar system, a galaxy, a universe, whatever that keeps adding. Like, the universe might be a subatomic, you know, quark or neutron or cell or atom in another, like, more massive, uni-universe or multiverse or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I like it.
I love it. And just to clarify it, because I love going on like holofractal or simulation or futurist or just physics subreddits, just to, like, I'm a layperson. I obviously don't have, but I love reading about it and thinking about it. But when someone posts on those boards an image saying something like as above, so below, and showing like a cell dividing and then a star, whatever thing, then the devil's advocate person says, like, no, actually there's a ton of diversity in scale. It's like actually crazy how much variety there is in scale, which is also true. A pebble, if you zoom out, is going to maybe become a galaxy, which is a way different dynamic. But so not everything as above, so below. It's not a one-to-one correspondence. But it's more like, if you see anything, it's like, if you go up in scale or down in scale, you haven't seen the last of me. I'm never going to go away. You can kill me on this scale, but the wholer me will exist, and the mini, mini, mini me is there. And I don't know. I think these things just give us comfort, because death is an innate fear, and the more ways you can articulate and hold in your mind why it's a logical fallacy to experience non-existence, then you feel good. At least I do.
The thing that you said earlier, I forget which thing it was, but it reminded me of the idea that, you know, your grades won't matter later, and that maybe life won't matter later. I was thinking about how like, sometimes waking up is difficult, and sometimes going to sleep is difficult. Like, those are both going from waking to sleeping, or sleeping.
Which do you
to
struggle
waking.
with? I struggle with waking, never with sleeping. I can sleep on the ground.
I'm better at falling asleep, but I can wake up easily, and I can fall asleep easily.
It seems like you can wake up easily, because you are up really early most times when I'm in town, or when you're in town. When I see you, you happen to be up early, and you're exceptionally good at getting back to people also. You're always on top of writing back, reaching out, and not even just like, well, you're my 3 friends, I keep up with you. You have friends from like other circles that interact with you. Introduce people to people, and you stay in touch with all of them, and it just seems like you're an octopus playing tennis, where I'm a slug. A slug. I was gonna say like ableist bad terms. I was gonna say like amputee or something, but you can't say amputee anymore.
No, be a slug.
Can you say amputee anymore?
I mean, you can. I think you can say it as long as it's not. I think that is it's not a bad word.
Yeah, you gotta keep up with. What the
language
the things
changes.
Are.
Yeah,
yeah, it does, and that's okay as long as the people enforcing that don't get too aggressive in their trying to make you compassionate. Like, it always feels weird to be aggressive towards someone when the end goal is compassion and empathy. Like, hey, be more compassionate, be more empathetic.
There's a Doug Stanhope joke where he says something like, I'll yell at you for not knowing something that I just learned yesterday.
That's exactly it. Is that from Home?
It's from a while ago.
Stanhope's one of the best all time.
He really knows what he's doing. So the idea that I have of it being difficult to go from wake to sleep or sleep to wake, but I like being asleep and I like being awake. My hope is, or my thought is, my analogy is like life and death are like that too. Like, being born is traumatic and dying is traumatic.
Transitions are painful. Yes, that's it.
But the state of life, the state of death, that we don't know since we know the state of life, which also can be traumatic. So I'm not saying, but I'm saying that, I guess I don't have a real point for this, but sometimes I'd say that, the transitions are potentially that involving more upheaval than any moment where you have the luxury or the privilege of being able to be like, here I am in this moment, alive and awake. Like, right now, there could be any, we're always at those moments, in the calm of a storm, in the eye of a hurricane, life all around, potential transition all around, potential awful things, big bad things, which brings me back to the, little good things, big bad things. So it's nice to talk about little good things and not to throw big good things in people's faces. It's also not for me, I strive to not complain about little bad things, like, you stub your toe, somebody else might have just lost their grandfather,
You're exceptionally good about that too. Like, I consider myself more complainy, but I correct myself. Like, I complain and then I shift back to gratitude. But you're always looking on the greener side.
There's a new friend of mine she's a comedian in Boston named Laura Clark, and she's really funny. And she told me a story about when she was a child.
Sounds good.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me about when you were a child.
Oh, yeah. She was maybe, I want to say in kindergarten, but I might be making that up. But she was a small child, and she was watching the teacher, listening to the teacher, and, the tallest girl in her class, just unwittingly stood in front of her for a time, and she couldn't now see the teacher, and she was upset. And so she threw a fit. And the teacher then took that moment to point behind her and show her that she was standing in front of the shortest girl in the class at the same time that she was complaining about being blocked. She was blocking. It was like another hole-on type situation, as above, so below.
Yeah.
And that was just a valuable lesson for her, and then valuable for me. It's really stuck with me to the point that we can certainly see what's in front of us. We see who has what we don't. We can see what seems to be blocking our way, the people who are looming large, the things that we don't have, everything in front of us. But the idea of gratitude involves also looking back and being oh wow, I'm older and wiser than I used to be. I'm in a place that maybe other people wish they could be. Certainly where I live, how I was raised, what circumstances I'm in, whatever the case, if I have this time, this awareness, my last girlfriend, Casey, who listened to a Buddhist podcast that recommended, when you're in traffic, looking at the people behind you and being
What's the podcast?
I forget. It might be Against the Stream. but I'm not sure. That she listened to a few different Buddhist podcasts, and that was, I think, one of them. So you look back at the people behind you in traffic and be like, I send you love. Like, look, I've been where you are. I love you. And then the harder part, looking at the people ahead of you and being like, I send you love. Because we are all, in that situation, the same. You're all the traffic.
We're all red blood cells on the little highway.
Exactly. In that vein or artery, as it were. And so, big bad things, like little bad things are not, for me, not worth complaining about. They're good to acknowledge, but as far as like things to talk about in comedy or things to be like, here's my message for the world. I stubbed my toe and it hurts, as opposed to like big bad things like, injustice, homophobia, sexism, racism, transphobia, all of these things, all the isms and the phobias that are, affecting mass amounts of disenfranchised people, mass unfairness, hunger, wars, all this stuff.
Yeah, it is all hate versus love, and that the one definition of love is to see the other as part of yourself, and souls are the fingers of God, that sort of thing, unity. And then hatred is to see that which is actually you as not you, so you're trying to attack it so that there's no more of that, and there's more space for you to be a you, the most important thing.
Oh yeah.
And it's easier said than done, of course.
Oh yes. But you are actually attacking yourself because you are everything and everything is everything, and that is hopefully, there's it's illusory, like that love is actually the only real thing, and all of these other things that seem like they're not love are just sort of, clouds in the way of the blue sky that is ever present, but we can't always see or access inside of us or outside of us, but it is always there.
It sure is. It's so easy to it's so easy to say that, and we will always be, but to the echo, the people listening to this in, let's say, 100 years, they're like, those two guys are dead now. Like, what like, they're saying it and I want to believe it, but they're dead.
We're fine.
Yeah.
I have a new joke, kind of joke about my not having as much fear of death as I used to, because thinking about, when your lap exists while you're sitting down, then you stand up and your lap is gone, but your legs are still there.
Yeah, I like that one.
And so that's, everything that makes us up, has always been and always will be. So it's just, we're the universe's lap, and the universe stands up or just shifts into a different configuration. And yeah, the fact that I don't have any memory of being terrified for billions of years before this body existed. So that's good. And
maybe that's why we came here. Maybe it was billions of years of terrifyingness, and then we're like, I'm going to go in a human three-dimensional matrix.
I do think that I like the idea of there being, just pre-consciousness or all consciousness, but not in this form, like the everything but this form is like one thing that's like, okay, now I'm going to go on, like, whether you call it a simulation or like the equivalent of a roller coaster or like a horror movie, be like, I'm going to have like an immersive experience. Like, I'm going to go right now and be Myq and Ramin, and we're going to have a nice conversation. But at other times, you're going to, I'm going to have a painful time. I'm going to, experience what that was like again. And because while we're not our bodies, when, the rest of the time, before and after, and in between everything, it could be just like, years of, decades, centuries, millennia, infinities of infinite bliss, infinite everything, infinite, not having a body, not being a body. So not having those same, you can't be screaming if you don't have a mouth.
Yeah. When you, the lap not existing thing sparked a thought in my head of, I think it was James Altucher. I don't remember, but let's just say it was him, but talking about suicide and feeling suicidal, and then at the moment of it realizing, like, well, what do I mean by that? It's like, well, because my heart is just pumping blood. I'm not telling it to pump blood. I don't want it to like stop doing that. Like, I don't want to, even when we're conscious of our blinking and our breathing, it kind of it gets annoying, right? When someone's like, you're now aware of your blinking. It's like, well, no, I don't want to be aware of it. I want it to just happen naturally. So there's all these processes we take for granted in having a body, and because we don't have, the car we want, or there's debt letters coming to your mailbox or
Sure.
something, or you can't have the job you want. It's like, no, I want to just get out of here because I'm banking on really what it is spinning the infinity wheel of fortune when you leave this consciousness and when you go to sleep too, I guess. It's
Sure.
just a roll of the... I had a thought I'd never made into a joke, but just the thought of I wish we didn't have to go to bed and I could just pick what I had to watch instead of complete random roll of the dice reality.
For dreams? Or
yeah. Because we don't get to control it. It's
That's true.
just a random weird movie.
You also just reminded me of one of your Instagram cartoons about flaking on stress, I think. You know, like just procrastinate hanging out with stress. Like be like, I'll meet up with you later.
Yeah.
And then just do that forever.
Yeah, if you're worried about anything, write it down on a piece of paper and then schedule it to 7 p.m. or something if it's in the morning.
Oh,
or,
yeah.
Yeah, something, schedule it for later in the day and just tell yourself I'm not going to talk to that until that end of the day, which you can't keep doing it if it's, I understand, like you do have to pay for your mortgage, your rent, your these kind of things, or there'll be consequences. Now, you don't have to. You can let all this stuff fade away.
Yes.
And in doing so, it's scary, but if someone noticed you doing that, you'd probably become some kind of sensation, or the people close to you would keep feeding you stuff, which is where all these gurus, like, not all of them, but some of them, like, they're just surrounded by people that love them and feed them. So if you just sit and smile all day, I bet you'll just be surrounded by, like, fruit and desserts and, like, people and, like, blankets and stuff. It'll probably just happen. But you have to, like, stick to it. You can't be like, hey, you, I need some money. But if you just sit still and just smile, like, they're gonna do it. Or, I don't know, maybe you end up homeless. Don't try this at
Some
home.
people, might end up just dying. But it's like gurus. I don't want to spoil the movie The Prestige, but I just thought about...
Is that the one with David Bowie as Tesla?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, I gotta see that still, not just because David Bowie is Tesla.
Yeah, it's a cool
really.
movie, and I won't say anything more about it, but I was just reminded of it for a specific reason that I don't think could have spoiled anything based on the conversation that we've had, because I haven't said enough about it. So to distract you, I'll go back to the reason that I brought up big bad little good things is I think when because I was thinking about talking to Zach on the phone and like disclaiming and warning and getting out ahead of like when talking about what kind of thing it's going to be. Like, this is going to be a boring, important story. This is going to be a slightly braggy story. Like, this is going to be, hopefully, more often than not, a valuable, like a little good thing or something that we're addressing that's a big bad thing that, I need help with this or can I help you with this? As opposed to, this one might be like a little bad thing. Those are...
Yeah, if you're playing someone a YouTube story, you should let them know if it's NSFW, and you should let them see the scrubber and how long it is. Like, playing someone a thing and it's 15 minutes and they don't know, that's not very polite.
Yes, there's that is a great thing. Like, usually when Zach and I talk, we know, like, if he'll sometimes be like on a 10-minute break from work. He'll be like walking for 10 minutes, and so he'll tell me, he'll be like, I've got until this time, and then we usually try to take turns. Unless if somebody has a pressing thing, if somebody has like, hey, this is a time sensitive or emotionally, necessary issue for right now, that's more important. Like the Jewish Sabbath, as I understand it, one of the rules is don't work. But if you're a doctor and you're passing by somebody who would die if you didn't do your doctor job, then they're like, that's actually a more important guideline to like, keep a person alive. I'm sorry, the rule is I don't work, I'm a doctor, my hands are tied. And so similarly, like one of our guidelines in our phone friendship is like take turns, be fair and equitable, listen and share in some, good yin-yang measure. But if somebody needs more listening at the time, then that's more important at the moment than just quote-unquote fairness.
You hear about the story about the monks and or the fable of the monks, and they're not allowed to be around women or do anything with women or talk to women or anything. And
is he carrying her across a river?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that one. Yes.
Okay, so this monk flies across a lake with... Yeah, for the listeners at home or outside in the park or in their car right now. This is the story of the monks going by a woman who they're not allowed to interact with because whatever weird, goofy reasons. And
even this this highly enlightened society has some sort of, if not sexism, some sort of patriarchal notions that men and women are different.
Yeah.
And should be treated differently in this particular way, that the monk men don't touch women.
So one of them picks up the woman and then carries her across the river to the hospital or something safely. And then,
she needs it.
Yeah, she gives them to the hospital, and then they keep going. And then the other monk, he's kind of like pouty and just kind of holding on to something, and then the other monk's like, hey, what's up, bro, why are you
and this is like at night, this is like, it's been hours later,
and he's like, no, I'm just thinking about when, like, you carry that woman back there, we're not supposed to carry women. And then he says, brother, it is you that is still carrying her. So
I stopped carrying her after we crossed the river. You've been carrying her all day.
And had they not interacted with her, they would keep carrying her. It's the what's the other one? I love these. They're not Ram Dass fables, but he's where I first heard a lot of them, so I associate it with his voice, and sometimes the details are changed when I look up the original one.
Yeah.
But,
like Grimm fairy tales.
Yeah.
The woman drowns, actually.
Oh, really?
No, that's not true. But Grimm fairy tales are all actually more twisted and dark than...
Mother Goose and Grimm. And it reminded me of something else when you were saying you and Zach talking and the disclaimers and giving each other turns. Did I tell you about my friend Mark and his friend, who I forget the name of, but they go on walks in the woods, and the first hour they only talk about him, and then the other hour they only talk about her.
Wow.
Like, so you get to separate each other's...
That's very interesting. I don't know that would be my way to do it.
Because then it doesn't allow for, like, right traffic. It's like keeping one traffic, like, okay, this one's going to be green for 1 hour, and then this one's going to be red. Maybe traffic works out that way, but the way conversations go, it might be like, well, we've got another hour. I guess the bowel movement this morning was a little irregular.
Here's what I'd like to say about me. Is I'd like to hear about you.
That's what I tell anyone who's got social anxiety and they're like, oh no, I don't know, I'm going to this party tonight, what am I going to say? Like, that's the first mistake. You're not supposed to say, like, hi guys, how's it going? I just got back from what's this guy?
I just got back from the Saying Stuff store and I got a lot of stuff.
Or going into a room that already has people in it. Like, you have to match that energy, not like come in with a lampshade on your... Or if it's a lampshade on your head, do that. But if you're only metaphorically using a lampshade, then...
Yeah, it's very valuable. Let me say something. It's very valuable to listen. I definitely like asking people questions about, especially because... about their lives and, what they like doing, how they spend their time, because everybody does have specific things. And, I certainly like finding new things about me and in my own life, making new connections and, having this interplay, which, conversations with other people can help both people discover new things about, the world, themselves, each other. But when, I've certainly, if it's a question between, if somebody was like, hey, like a stranger is either going to tell you about themselves for an hour or ask you about yourself for an hour. I guess if it's an interviewer and I'm doing there's certain situations in which I would say, sure, I'll talk about myself for an hour if I'm doing comedy or if I'm doing a podcast or whatever it is. But in a party type, it's even an hour seems like too long. If it's the next 15 minutes, I'd love to hear about, I'll ask questions about this
I might
person.
be exaggerating. It might not be an hour. It
I
might be
understand.
15 minutes.
Oh, no, that's fine,
It's been forever since I heard this.
No, it's a new thing.
Yeah.
My new thing is, I would definitely, and especially when there are people who are like, oh, my life is boring, you're a comedian. I'm like, well, my life's not boring, but I certainly know lots of my own thoughts and feelings and stories that, if you ask me questions about me, new person, I'll definitely do my best to have a new experience sharing similar information that I've shared before. But definitely it's exciting for me to get new information, completely new information from you. That is, do you know the Robert Haas quote I like? It's, repetition makes us feel secure. Variation makes us feel free.
Repetition makes us feel secure.
Variation
liberates us.
Feel more free. Oh yeah, that's fun. You did a good job.
We both did. I did it the word way. You did it the tone way. Both are different ways of doing it. Much like in that book over there, The Music Lesson, there's different ways of expressing music through tone.
That makes sense.
And other variables that are off the tip of my tongue, right? No.
The tip of your tongue.
Yeah. You know what? I'm just realizing this since we're taping this in my office. Like I'm only noticing this internally. I think because I so rarely speak in this room. So much of my time in this room is spent like typing on the computer, drawing stuff, doing individual activities. It's not a social room.
Sure.
So when I'm introducing the social aspect of it, it's like this does not compute in this room. You socialize in other rooms or out in the street or in the kitchen or
other buildings.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like interesting. It's finding out something new about myself in that.
That makes sense. Yeah. So I think the goal, also just to say a little more about that quote, I think that repetition and variation, security and freedom are both important, even though they are sometimes in opposition. There needs to be balance, this sort of yin-yang, like too much security and that you can't move and you're in jail, too much freedom and maybe you're dead,
Yeah.
No safety at all. Like, so they need to be balanced.
Check this out. What do you think of this? It's just something I wrote down so I've got these little boxes and I write my ideas in it depending on whether it's a book idea or an art idea or something, and I categorize it.
Each color represents a different
each thing
form.
And symbol represents a different thing. So something I'd written out recently was, I don't know how long it's going to be, but the concept of starting out your day as if you were in jail. So like really pretend like you start the day in jail. So this means you don't have social contact. Disclaimer, you can't do this if you have kids. Like if you have kids, then nothing I say has any value to you, because when people have kids, like, well, everything changes when you have kids. Exactly. So
Right.
I don't have them, so I can only speak from this spoiled time guy kind of perspective that can do anything. So back to it. Start like you're in jail, so you don't get to talk to anyone. You don't get to check your devices. Your device is taken away from you. What can you do? You can meditate.
Yep.
You can read something. You can exercise. So before you do those three things, pretend like just really like I can't do that stuff. I'm in the cellar right now, and
In
then
the jail cellar.
then when you've done those things, your yoga and you're just maybe reading out of a book with high vibration, like helping your soul type of stuff, book, then you're out of jail. You release yourself from jail. Because I was finding myself, I was waking up not thinking I'm in jail, that I'm in the world, but then imprisoning myself with like checking the news, checking the feed, not exercising, pushing exercise off to later, and you just end up having a miserable day. And if you have a miserable day as an adult, you're doing it wrong, because no one's telling you what to do. Like you're...
Yeah, so do what we say. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Meditation is my favorite first thing to do. I strive to do that when I get up. And so like I make my phone, I do it with an app on the phone, but I put the phone on airplane mode, so the only thing that can happen. Yeah.
Andy Puddingcombe.
Yep.
Yep.
And Puddingcombe, is that his name?
Puddingcombe,
Oh,
but I like
fun.
Puddingcombe because it's like, check out how smooth this pudding is. Notice how it doesn't droop or like wiggle in the way. It's like a way of saying it's good.
And it could be pudding with two T's, so it's like putting a comb through
your pudding,
the pudding of of your soul and your mind, and it's so valuable in and of itself, but also for the very reason that you're saying, like that sometimes I accidentally, or not accidentally, but sometimes I do like look at the news first, and then that is something that like needs to be like wrinkled, like sort of or ironed out when I'm meditating. Sometimes those things will like pop in, but if I just go in, completely from sleep, wake, meditate, then I'm just like, okay, it's almost like I'm still asleep. It's like I haven't started the day, like there's nothing official. And it's also, like putting off worrying, scheduling worry for later, because like, oh yeah, if I slept 20 minutes later, then the same thing would be happening. Like, there's no rule that says I have to look at these emails right now or ever. Obviously, again, if you have things that quote-unquote need to get done, I like to think of it all as things that you get to do. If you want to have a home, then you have to pay your rent. But you get to, like you could live in your car, you could live in a van.
Yeah, language. It's the same thing, but it's just the language of it shifting it. And I'm always trying to overwrite the natural negativity that the negativity grows like weeds, and you can plant stuff and you can water it and you can grow that, but the weeds are kind of always going to be there. But I was just thinking that I wrote "I feel great" on that wall there. I just put that up today, and
That's great.
And I'm feeling great about it, because then instead of looking at door, you suck, how come you're not doing blank, you said you'd do blank last week and you still haven't even written the email about the thing of the thing, and then instead it's like, I feel great. And even if I don't, I'm still hacking it, because the mind can be fooled, and that's, you got to use that to your advantage.
I like advantage.
Your advantage, a big, like instead of a cottage, advantage, advantage.
Advantage mansion.
Yeah, advantage mansion. That's going to be the name of this episode, even though the name of the episode is just Myq Kaplan, because I like just name style. Cause
I get it.
I don't even like introducing people as he is a comedian, writer, musician, and then that means you don't get to be a dolphin trainer anymore. Or if you do, it's like, oh, he thinks he can be a dolphin trainer. What a hack! But you're a Myq Kaplan. You're this thing. And you've been a comedian up until now, but you might say, like, to hell with comedy. Now I'm a doctor. Ever since they had those instant Matrix style knowledge things, and I'm going to be that for a week. So
your "I feel great" thing reminds me of two things. Number one, I think there's at least one restaurant, like sort of a vegan restaurant,
Cafe Gratitude.
It could be. It might literally be this place, but where they have, like, on the mirror it says, like, "You're beautiful," and it's just nice. It makes you feel good. Even though, it's like, hell, they didn't put that there for me specifically, but you get to see it, you get to feel it for a second.
That was something me and my friend Kate Loomis came up with for an advertising class for the Oxygen Network, like a mirror, but it didn't say "you look beautiful." It was going to say "you look fine," but not like "you look fine." You look fine. You look fine.
You look fine.
Yeah,
Stop looking.
Like kind of a Jewy inflection of it. You look
fine.
Jewish inflection.
I accept.
You can say Jewy. Yeah.
I mean, it depends on where your heart is.
Yeah, and it's loving. It's loving Jews.
I know where it is.
Yeah.
I co-sign you saying it like that right now, and I appreciate it. And, actually, there's two other things. One is about my girlfriend and things being good right now, and the other one, maybe I've forgotten. I feel great. There's a mirror. Oh, no, I remember. It's a joke that I have, kind of. It's an experience that I had that I talk about on stage sometimes. I went on this morning TV show, which I love doing. Comedians sometimes talk about, like, not liking doing radio in the morning.
I love it.
I also do love it, but I've had experiences that I'm like, I understand why a person might not like this one as much.
Yeah, Fucky Dick in the Morning, or whatever the stupid name is. Just that guy. We all know that guy. And no, that's not Dudley and Bob. Dudley and Bob is a good one.
And so, but I've done more rarely, but every once in a while, like a strange, like local TV show, like the local morning show, like Good Day New York or the Today Show or something, but just in some, smaller town. And it's like it's certainly not as widely seen as, a nationally syndicated show. And it's like, wow, like who are these people? Who's watching this show? Like who's watching the show at 6 a.m. that will be awake for 10 p.m. tonight when my show is? But I'll do it. And it's like such a it's like, it's quote unquote TV. So it seems like something, but it's obviously, I'm not getting paid for it, but it's like promotional, but it's like such a weird, cool, interesting thing. And so sometimes what they do is that sometimes what they do is ask you questions. Like I often like to just I'm like, I'll be happily talk about anything. You have questions, ask me, I'll talk about me. I don't like to just, be set up for jokes necessarily, but sometimes that's what they want. Sometimes they're like, can you give us this one time they said, can you give us these four questions that'll like lead into jokes? And I remember I wrote down a bunch of the questions. I'm like, yeah, I can. I was hoping that I could just use them to like as a launching pad to go into just more real but funny conversation, not just the jokes. And so, they asked me the first question and we had the experience. They asked me the second question, we had the experience. And then this woman who was the host was she was like a former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. Like she was, a conventionally, objectively, like, model cheerleader, like quote unquote beautiful on the outside lady type. She seemed like a nice lady as well. And then she says to me, after asking the first two questions, she says, "Now, how does it feel to be so good looking that people are always asking you about talking to you about like how good looking you are. And I was like, that's not like a question that leads to a joke. I don't have a joke about that until now. And I'm like, wow. I was just like, wow, this beautiful lady is asking me how it feels to be so good looking. Like, this feels so... I was like, I don't even know. And I was sort of just like in stunned silence. I'm like, well, that's so nice. And she was just kind of looking at me as though I was supposed to have an answer. And then it occurred to me, oh, I did write that question down as a joke. I thought that she would know it was a joke, but she didn't. And so I forgot to even register that I did it. And so it's like the thing over there where it says, I feel great. Imagine if it said, you feel great, or if it just, the mirror saying, you're beautiful. Whatever it is, like, I realized, even after I realized that I had made her say it, I still had the good feelings, which is kind of the way that my parents, I feel about them, because they like told me very encouraging things growing up. Like, you can do anything. You're so smart. You're so capable. You could be the president or an accountant. Those are the only two options. Maybe a doctor or a lawyer. Those are the only four.
What do your parents do?
They're teachers.
That's right. I think we visited this on an earlier podcast.
It's plausible. But so the point is that another thing that we've talked about probably is I like this thing from the Talmud about if you have, your left pocket and your right pocket, each one should have a piece of paper. One of them says, this world was created for me. The other one says, I am nothing but ash and dust, or this world was created for you. You are nothing but ash and dust. Like another sort of set of great truth opposites, which is another thing I talk about that I think Niels Bohr said, the opposite of a profound truth is often another profound truth. And so, like, that goes with that, and it goes with the repetition and variation thing, like that there are these powerful things that are seemingly in opposition but are both true and valuable. And so I was told growing up about mainly the one piece of paper that said the world was created for you. They weren't like, and also you're dust. You're... Like, I was like, oh, I'm important. I'm also society was telling me as a straight white male that I was important and that my opinions were valuable and that I should be achieving and I could be achieving. And so I had that attitude. And like, it was only as an adult that I'm like, oh, I don't just automatically get everything that I want or think I deserve or need, or I've had very fortunate experiences, partially because my psyche was built up so much, and I feel like now I'm lucky that I get to fill in the other side of things too, the balance that everything that I have will be quote unquote taken away, everything that I am will stop being, and that's true for everyone, but that I'm like already psychologically, emotionally, I was supported and sort of so encouraged and loved in that way from childhood that even knowing all these other things now intellectually, like I'm like, it doesn't hurt me.
Does that seem odd that you would, because, everyone knows that the cliche of, the sad clown and all comics are fucked up or something like this. Do you find it odd that you found your way into being a stand-up comic, which is often filled with lone wolves and, mentally ill people? Because you don't seem to exhibit mental struggles, which is, we all have mental struggles, but it's better to be brought up that way, of encouraged with lots of love, and then find out that the world is cruel and harsh, other than like, world is a cruel and harsh place and you're nothing, because then it's going to repeat that even as you're getting stuff. It's like, oh, I'm getting all this stuff, but I'm still nothing. And
yeah, there's another saying, like, I don't know who said this first, but we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
Yeah.
And so if you're led to believe that it's awful, and another joke/truth that I tell on stage sometimes is that, this is actually not a funny thing specifically, but it's part of a real thing that I believe, and it's part of larger jokes. My comedy is funny.
Keep the races separate.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is, some people are like, the world is tough, so you have to be tough. But if you're tough, then that actually makes the world tougher than if you weren't tough, because you're part of the world. Literally, like, if you're kinder, then the world is kinder. You can make the world kinder by being kinder, literally, because you're part of it. You're not in the world, you are the world. You're part of the universe, you're part of everything, so everything is more what you are. So if you are, or you strive to, be more positive, be like more forgiving, more generous, more well-intentioned, more, and it's, these aren't things that are easy to do all of the time in every situation, but if you can, like, starting from, all other things being equal, being like, everybody's out to get me, you're going to see that more, But if you're like, everybody who seems to be out to get me probably has their own sad thing going on, probably has their own insecurities, probably has, what happened to them this morning or their whole life. Like, I think, I like the expression, hurt people as well. But to address your question of like my going into comedy, I certainly had a path through sadness, through some suffering, like probably not as much as, it's not a competition of suffering, but there certainly are people who have experienced and do experience different levels of struggles than I do. But like I had, like, my parents divorced when I was at, just starting puberty. We moved, and so I had a whole new set of people that I had to meet, and I didn't really
that alone will do it.
That alone time was, part of, I didn't see it as, like, I have this other joke about growing up in New Jersey and how, growing up there, you don't know that everybody has whatever feelings they have about it outside of it until you leave and people are like, that sucked, right? New Jersey, it sucks. And you're like, oh, I thought it was just my life, And so similarly, the experience that I had, and Baron Vaughn has this great joke about, growing up without a father, without knowing his father, and people saying to him, like, do you miss your father? And he's like, I don't miss what I never had, because you don't have both of the experiences. You only have the experience that you have, and maybe you see other people having what seems to be the other experience, but you can never know what they're experiencing as well. You can see a seemingly happy couple not know what they're experiencing internally.
A friend of mine has no sense of taste and smell, and I learned this because he loves candy, and he gets chicken nuggets fried like double. Like he extra fries them in a deep fryer. Loves like extra crispy stuff. So like
because he can do texture.
Yeah, texture. Same as I think Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry's, or it's Jerry. One of the two Ben and Jerry guys can't do it either, which is why there's all the crushins and texture in Ben and Jerry's ice cream, because he can't do it, and it's like Beethoven not hearing sort of situation. But when I asked him, like, if you could take a pill or I could snap my fingers and you could have full taste, would you do it? And since he had that his whole life, he just paused for a bit and he didn't say yes. Like, he was about to kind of say no. I interrupted because I interrupt sometimes, but saying that it's like the people with color blindness who are given have you seen those videos of people putting on color glasses? They're awesome. They're better than soldiers being reunited with their kids and dogs because the amount of emotion, maybe it's just because it's a new way of doing it, but and it's mainly men too, because men are more colorblind, but they'll give them the glasses and put them in a room full of like flowers and just balloons and stuff. They just walk in there normal. They put on the glasses and they just start tearing up, and some of them will try to hold it in and be like, I'm keeping myself composed because, I'm being filmed, but purple's getting me like right here. Wow. And they just haven't seen purple before, and it's like they have this potential that hasn't been wasted yet, which not that we're wasted, because we've only seen the limited color spectrum we've seen, like in the hyper dimensionality.
Tall person in front of us, small person behind us.
Exactly.
Holons above, holons below.
I love the term holon. It's
look
literally
it up
everything.
For sure.
Yeah, holon.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Yeah.
But I wish that I could have that experience. Maybe I will someday, another one of not seeing color. Yeah. And I've heard the bad side of that too, where people with Alzheimer's sometimes have to be put in a room where there's no red, because the color red shocks them because they don't remember it. Like, imagine seeing a color you've never seen before. I'd be
my God.
Hey, Mike, have you read this? And if I pulled out a book of a new color, I'd just been holding it this whole time and never seen it. Like, you wouldn't be like, no, I haven't read that before. You'd lose it.
It was challenging for me to experience the fact that red is the name of a color, and also what you've done with a book. Have you read this? But I managed to make my way through it, and your analogy was good. Can I say?
Please, yeah. Oh, and make sure you go back to the thought of Catherine saying the things of now.
Oh yeah,
that's it.
Actually,
that's the one.
Yeah,
I remembered the pin. I'm terrible at sticking pins and stuff and remembering it.
Not anymore.
Yes.
Now you're good at it.
I'm getting better. That's one of the reasons I want to do this, not just to speak to friends more, but I think that podcasting actually does make you a better person, listener, aware of things you do, aware of other people, learning more about things, and putting out that sweet, sweet content that we all love to make and need to have presence on the internet to still exist.
I call it content.
Putting
out that sweet content.
The pin is still there, but do you experience neurosis about the podcast, or do you not care for your own? You're like, oh, the numbers are down, or the numbers are up, or you don't even look at the numbers.
I actually don't look at the numbers
ever.
I don't really have access to them. I could ask,
you don't have sponsors, right?
I don't.
So it's a labor of love. You're not trying to get Stamps.com and BarkBox and all that garbage.
I'm not. I would love for people to be knocking down, I would love to do no work and keep doing exactly what I'm doing, and then also gain, massive benefits.
Does Keith and the Girl advertise?
They do, I think, yes.
Do they? Because you're one of their affiliates, right?
Yes. I mean, they are my producer.
Did they ever approach you about that? Be like, look, Casper Mattress wants you to.
They haven't. I think we don't really talk about the relationship exists. I mean, and they're my friends, and I talk to them, but we don't we're not like, how do we do more every once in a while they're like, can you mention that we have an app now,
Oh, okay, gotcha. It's weird because whenever you post an episode and I go to share it on Facebook, it's like their image is of them.
Yeah. They're good marketers. They put their image on my podcast, and I'm happy for them to look. It's possible that I don't know who is getting the best part of the bargain, because when I started working with them, I'm like, wow, they're a gigantic, podcast. They're a gigantic network. I have fewer listeners than they do. So I'll be reaping the benefits of being over there, and also reaping the benefit of not having to, do anything. And then they get the benefit of having more content, having my show, having, my fans on their network as well, even if it's not, equitable exactly 50-50 or whatever it is. And, they are making their living from podcasting, and I'm not. I'm making my living from other things. And yeah, for me, podcasting is, I wouldn't even say a labor of love. It's just love, a lover of love.
Yeah, and you're making your money on a more fun thing. Not that this is not fun, but performing stand-up comedy is more fun than a conversation. It just is.
It's differently fun, but yes.
But it is more, too. It just is. It just is. It's like, jalapenos are spicier than oranges. They're not better, but they're more. Or I don't know. It's stupid.
I like it. You also reminded me of, from way earlier, asking about how I was, after I posted that tweet respecting women and then got, negative feedback, in addition to positive feedback. Has that changed things? One thing that it changed is I used to look at more of the responses. And you can look at the ats on Twitter, and you can also search for your name without an at. And I actually haven't done that as much since, because that's where a lot of the negativity was. And I used to think that and the reason this sort of also ties into the way that I'm good at getting back to friends is I'm not OCD, but if there's a spectrum from totally doesn't have OCD to definitely does have OCD, I am further along the spectrum. I have more elements in my personality and characteristic, more obsessiveness and or compulsiveness, but not to the point that it becomes that it gets in the way of my productivity. In fact, it sometimes helps my productivity because I'm I want to get back to the people. It makes me feel good to close the parentheses.
Is that the OCD you're referring to? Is the corresponding
Yes, and a similar thing normally is if I put a tweet out, I want to see the responses to it, even though now I'm now it is also, a tweet is also sometimes a labor of love. Sometimes you want to know that people liked it, but also, like a joke, it's sort of both things. You create a thing, whether it's stand-up or a comic or an app or whatever it is, and ultimately the goal will be for other people to enjoy it and appreciate it and share it and respond to it. But when you're creating it, like, when I'm creating something, I don't think about, ooh, they're gonna love this part, because like any given part at the beginning might not be there at the end. So like all the parts where it starts is just like, for me, I'm like, I'm making this, I made this, and then I share it, and I'm like, oh, now I'm gonna like twist it this way, take this part out, add this part, and it's, you know, a process where you get to, you know, play this game where people's opinions help you like learn, you know, what you want to do the most. But it is ultimately, like, now I'm still like looking at, eventually I'll look at the numbers of how much a tweet got, and I'll be happy if it reached more people. But also sometimes I'm just like, that was a good one, you know.
Was that the most hate you felt online?
Yes.
Oh, so that is a big thing.
I mean, I remember also, like, when Last Comic Standing happened and I was on it, there was one of my sets was posted on the front page of YouTube, and like 50,000 people saw it in a day. And that was like the most that had ever happened, you know, that quickly. And it was about religion, and so there were people who were like calling me a Jew going to hell. But like that also, like that didn't make me, I was just like, oh, I just stopped looking. That's the thing, is I think I had another tweet that went like super, like, 100,000 something retweets. And so I don't know how many people wrote back to it, but I was like, I just can't keep up with I can't respond to everything. I can't look at everything.
I wonder what the ratio is of, because if something gets popular, there is always a dislike, no matter what it is. There's always a few thumbs down. I wonder what the like highest concentration of positivity in terms of online.
That's a great question.
Comment is. It can't be higher than like 95. Like, it's got to just peter out. There's got to always be an underbelly of 5% haters. And haters comment more than people that like it. People that like it are like, that's good. I'm not going to just say excellent and then do that. And it's that whole, with restaurants, there's a saying of if you have a good experience, you tell a friend. If you have a bad one, you tell 5.
And you tell the people that gave you the bad experience. Mm-hmm. Or you tell Yelp.
You call them...
Negative
call them
things. There was do you know my friend Baratunde Thurston?
Yeah. He's I met him forever ago at South by Southwest. At the time he was the web editor of The Onion. Oh, yeah. And he did Whiskey Wednesdays.
Or
Whiskey Fridays.
No,
okay.
Whiskey Wednesdays does make sense.
I think it's a play on words. Yeah, Whiskey Fridays.
That's fun. I never thought about it.
Fake of it.
So yeah, he and I started doing comedy together in Boston, 15 years ago or so. And we've been good friends, and I was having lunch with him a few months ago, sometime the past couple of months, and talking about this very thing where, if you could have like 1 million people like something, but then if you look at the comments, it'll be like 90%. It could be, 1 million like it and like 1,000 don't like it, but then the comments will be 50-50 positive and negative, and you're like, that ratio doesn't make sense. Except for, obviously, people who like things aren't just spending their time, like you said, like the people who don't like things are like, because they're seeing, they don't like themselves, they don't like anything, they don't like, and they're just constantly churning that out. And so Baratunde had an idea. I don't know if he'll actually make this as like an app, but it would be something to, for YouTube comments, have something like a system where when anyone clicks a thumbs up, there's a bot that makes a comment that's positive, like to be like, hey, I gave you a thumbs up. Like, so it's not inflating things, but it will literally create, physical positive space to match the negative space that is put there as well. So that if there are, 1,000 positive comments, you'll see, or 1,000 thumbs up, you'll see 1,000 positive comments. And it'll, hopefully dilute the negative experience that you might have seeing a wall of negativity, even if there was just, a number ticker that represented the positivity.
But the downside of that is you can use it North Korea style, where if it's something that should be getting a lot of down thumbs, it's like, I love tearing down net neutrality. Great work, Ajit Pai, or whatever the guy.
You're definitely right.
Name.
There are no answers.
Yeah, anything involving a force can be used in...
Are you saying that a hammer can be used to build a building, but also...
do good things,
hurt somebody? There's a thing from... You just reminded me of The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Okay.
Which, have you read that?
Yes.
I may have told you... So there was a thing I was going to say earlier, and a thing that I'm going to say now. The now thing is... a friend of mine was telling me that I think I've not read the whole thing, but I've read.
Your friend was telling you that?
Yeah, they were like, you haven't read the whole thing. But the way they told me that was that they told me about a thing that was in it that I was like, oh, I don't remember that part. And it was about how he was sort of like saying negative things about buildings, like that buildings were like a newfangled, like, like not necessary technological advance, and that, which you also just reminded me of because you're like, yeah, building a building, no good. Hammer can be used for good. But the thing I like from it is my favorite quote is, the greater that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Which doesn't guarantee you get to contain all the joy that all the sorrow carves, but that also, I think, helps me contextualize, like, how I do comedy and, like, where I'm at now, that, I did have these, this negative period of time, like this loneliness in high school, the awkward phase of, not having, like, tons of friends in this one place, but eventually, I through summer camp and through college and through learning that high school is not necessarily a microcosm of the universe, that eventually I was like, oh, so I still had those, those negative experiences, like sort of like in the reverse of the way that my life started, like my being given all this love and support and encouragement, then finding out, oh, that's not everything for real, but good thing I had that. And then the flip side in high school, having like, ooh, these experiences aren't my favorite, but they are all that's happening, so I'm going to experience them. And then later find out, I guess the analogy I look at sometimes is like when you're pushing your wrists against a doorway, and then you step out of the doorway and your arms float. Like, that's what high school was like for me. Is like just being like, oh, I'm like constrained and maybe this is all of everything. But then later I'm like, oh, it wasn't.
Yeah.
I can move around. I'm free. I don't have to talk to, like in high school, you have to talk to specific people. Like you're just trapped. You are more in prison than,
It is. It looks, you can drive by prisons and high schools and sometimes like not know which one it is. Like
Yes.
the Bobcat and Bjork game or whatever.
Oh, I don't know that.
I think
That's
it's a Family Guy joke or
That's
something,
fun.
but it was the first thing I could grab from the analogy cabinet.
So, to go back to the pin, finishing the morning TV story is essentially just saying, like, that woman said a thing that I made her say. And that's what you're doing there with your,
My brain.
I feel great. And you could just put like Post-its all over your house that say positive things. Like, it'll be a positive thing when you're doing it. And then it'll also be a positive thing whenever you see it later. It'll keep paying, sort of exponential dividends. And you could send emails to yourself, from the future, like send one even, like there's a program Boomerang, Google Boomerang that I use.
You turned me on to Boomerang, and we have a joke that repeats every month on Boomerang.
Oh, yeah.
Which we might have mentioned it already, but we'll save it for another podcast to get into it.
And so you can send yourself emails in the future, like, and be like, I love you, like you're doing a great job, whatever it is, like you're older and wiser than I was before now. And so the thing that my Catherine, shared that's also like that is like sometimes even when we're going through like a difficult time where, we're optimistic that that's not going to be all that we're experiencing, or even if it was, even if we were just in a difficult place forever, like the being there together is still more valuable. Like the way my summer camp, which was my sort of the magical place that helped me see that people could be, kind and compassionate and loving, even though high school seemed to tell me otherwise. Like I would always say that my worst day at that camp was better than like the best day at school. And that's the way that I feel about my girlfriend. Like the worst day with her is better than the best day without her. And, there's everything is fluid and things could change, but that's where things are right now. And so I remember one time, like, one of us was going through something difficult and I said, things are going to be okay. And she said, things are okay. And that's why things are going to be okay, because they are okay now, which is sort of like the way that sometimes when you do affirmations, or people who, if you ever know about those, I think they say to do them in the present tense. Don't say like, I will accomplish this, because then that'll
You're
keep
already
it in
setting
the future.
The obstacle, yeah.
Right. So like, I am, experiencing that I'm in, and because you are in the now, the moment, the only thing. This is the best now that it can be. You are the best you that you could be. Everything that has happened has seemed, if time is, real in any way led you through space and time to now, and this is all that there is. And it is, it's the best and it's the worst. So why not focus on the best part of it?
Yeah. I'm just enjoying that now.
It's good. There's always...
It's the downside of nows because you know what? I bet that just put the listener right now also into the now.
Sure.
And that's me judging myself of silence where, oh no, if I don't have a thing to say right afterwards, then you're not being a good podcast host. But really,
you're being a good
you gotta
listener.
let that you gotta let like the good statements sit there, like in that what's it called, Power of Now book, where he has that weird looking symbol that after certain paragraphs there's going to be this symbol, and when you see that you're advised to just kind of digest what you just read and just sit there.
On a podcast of mine that I did recently, one of the potential titles that we came up with was based on the idea that, we were talking about, being grateful, being in the now, living in this moment, and then thinking about the people who would listen to it later because it wasn't streaming live. And the idea of when we talk about if somebody's listening to this when we're dead or anytime, they're like, wow, those guys were really living in the now in the past. So the title was Living in the Before. Living in the
Before. Oh, that when Catherine's saying it is okay now, it sparked something in my head with jealousy. Mm-hmm. And in show business, you often experience a lot of jealousy, especially if you're having a tough money month or whatever kind of thing you're going through, and you maybe see someone who you interpret as
having a good money month.
Yeah. Not liking it. Anyone you're jealous of in your head, whether you're jealous of some actress or Elon Musk or whoever it is, if you're in the ability to feel that jealousy and you're not actually screaming in pain or in some kind of bad thing, you don't know if the person you're jealous of isn't having the worst bathroom day and they're on the can and they've been there for an hour or they're in an airplane somewhere, they're having to travel and they're just crunched into the airplane and they have 8 more hours left to go. You never know what someone is experiencing right now. So to experience some kind of envy is flawed by its nature. You can't hold what the other person has to be envious of.
I like the idea that if you are in immense pain, you're probably not screaming thinking Elon Musk isn't in this pain right now. I wish I was Elon Musk. You're
that is how I scream.
Of course. I mean, the same thing I think we touched on earlier with, if you...
Do you experience a lot of jealousy? Not to mean that you hold on to it for days, but does it pop in frequently, or is that something you're genuinely happy for everyone a lot?
I would say, I only have my own experience.
Yeah, I'm asking your own.
Comparatively, I think that I experience it less than some other people do. Less than maybe. I think I'm probably, in an above average, lower jealousy.
The OCD is a little more towards, and then the jealousy is, you borrowed some of the jealousy to put towards the OCD. I would make that trade.
Yeah, I think that is so, because I also, now that you're saying this, I think about, there was a time when I listened to Pete Holmes' podcast regularly, every episode, back before there wasn't literally enough time in the universe that you could listen to all of them because they got to, I think they're, and I love Pete, and I love the podcast. The episodes are long. And so I don't listen to it all the time now, but there was a time when I was listening regularly, and at the beginning, he would always talk about where he was performing. I'm going to be at this club and that club and this club and that club and this club and that club. And some of them were places I have been. Some of them were places I was booked to go also soon. But some of them were places I've never been and would want to go. And he's definitely, a person who we started out doing comedy around the same time. And, then both had our own career trajectories, which have been I'm grateful for mine. There are, again, short people with shorter careers, different levels of quality and quantity behind me looking at me the way that I can look at him, at having now, having had a talk show, having an HBO show. And I don't specifically, those aren't my goals, but if somebody was hey, do you want Judd Apatow to produce an HBO show for you?
Yes.
Yes, I would be happy to have that happen. But it's interesting because I don't look at him having that and be like, man, I should have that. But it was only the times when I was like, I'm a comedian who performs at comedy clubs. Like, I want to perform at as many comedy clubs as possible. He's performing at a lot of comedy clubs. And so there would definitely I would just, fast forward through that to not listen to it because I know that I don't begrudge him.
Yeah.
Like, I want him to perform at as many places as possible, and I'm going to perform at as many places as possible that I can. And sometimes it's valuable to be like, oh, I forgot about that club. Like, let me try to look into that. Let me try to look into...
It's almost as if, not almost, but kind of is, we're jealous of our siblings, but not jealous of our parents. And the analogy I'm trying to say is like when someone says they're playing Madison Square Garden, that's just, it's too big for what I imagine
That's great.
having, so I'm not jealous of that. I wouldn't know what to do with that many people other than make an interesting piece of content for people watching online. Because it's like, look at him like run around and like kind of like duck, duck, goose people or whatever thing. Or maybe the material would carry that. I don't know. I've never played that big of a thing, and I recognize that the dynamics of playing 30,000 people or whatever that number is and timing the waves of even performing on a late night thing, I wasn't prepared for the warmed up studio audience of laughing for that loud and that kind of thing. Did you not experience that the first time you did TV? Like, it's a different feeling of, and I've only done actual TV one time, but I distinctly remember the feeling of it of like, I didn't get to do all the jokes I wanted to do. It made me a little uncomfortable that they cheered that loud for it. I think you can see it in my face a little bit where like I don't know how to move my body. You're supposed to start silent and I'm supposed to win you over. If you start at a 10, I don't have the drive to need to impress you.
I understand. I mean, it's funny because I'm on the outside of you and on the inside of me, and I definitely, having done the, however many late night spots I've done, they are all
That's awesome.
different.
You don't know the number.
I don't. I could calculate it, I think. It's somewhere around a dozen, I think, or maybe give or take a couple.
Cool. Go on.
And depending, I'd say each show that I've done has its own, different venue, and so different feel, and even, from time to time, different audiences. But yeah, it is always usually very different than performing for 5 minutes at a club, for sure. But also, my experience of watching you, like, that was the first thing I ever knew about you, was that late night set, and I loved it. Like, to you, it's different than normal, but to me, it was you. There's somebody told me once, I forget, I should learn whose quote this is, but they said it's the artist's burden to know what could have been. Like, if I do if I have a run of shows for a week and like, 6 out of 7 go like the best that I've ever experienced, and then the 7th one is fine, like, and somebody else sees that fine show and that's the first time they've ever seen me and they're like, I loved it. And then in my head, I'm like thinking like, oh wow, imagine if they had seen the thing that I loved.
Yeah.
But to them, it's sort of like, looking at yourself in the mirror, you see the nuances that are, like, oh, my hair is doing this thing today, and it didn't do that yesterday, and somebody else is like, you look the same every day.
Yeah,
like,
you in fact look more ridiculous constantly adjusting your hair when it really looks the same to the outside.
And so that's what, to me, if I had seen you do your most comfortable set compared to your most uncomfortable set, I'm sure I would prefer and maybe note now the difference between those extremes. But those extremes are way more extreme to you than they are. Like, I used to have there was a girl I dated when I was like 21, 22, and I remember she was very specifically like when she would like dress up fancy. Like, I think she wanted me to like notice and be like, hey,
oh yeah, you gotta notice.
You look so nice. But I thought that she was like so beautiful all the time, like that the discrepancy from her perception of like her at her worst, just rolling out of bed with her hair not fixed and sweatpants instead of this fancy elegant cocktail dress or whatever it is, and all her makeup, like she thinks it's like 0 to 100, and I'm like it's like 98 to 99, like the obviously there's certain, I'm sure there are people who, and like, this is only talking about appearance and as an analogy to the experience, like even mentally, spiritually, of doing comedy. Like, you doing your jokes for an amazing audience feels great to you, but you doing your jokes for a mediocre audience, to me, I'm still like, oh, those are still great jokes.
Did I ever tell you I saw Mitch Hedberg in Houston? And I thought it was incredible. And then when I'm in the bathroom at the end, when you have to stand in line for the bathroom with like 20 other people, and there was a couple of guys that were disappointed, and they're like, "Yeah, he was way drunk this time. Like, it's not as good as the last time we saw him." And this is Mitch Hedberg.
Sure.
At the time, it still holds up. It's still one of the legends.
Oh yeah. I mean, certainly, obviously, I've heard he's done. He may have done shows where, or there's all kinds of people who might do shows where they're too drunk and you can't understand them.
And he must have some, but I wasn't at one of those ones.
Yes.
And I'm aware of the stuff. Like, he almost had his leg amputated because of
heroin.
Heroin,
Yes.
yeah. That's scarier than dying, when it's something like losing a foot to diabetes is scarier than just dying of diabetes one day. Like, having huge restraints put on you is scarier. Not being it, because, you see disabled people all the time.
Yes.
That not all the time, but a lot of them, like, we just acclimate, and they're
like, yeah.
Isn't there a guy that climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with, like, he military crawled? He's a quadriplegic.
That sounds like a thing I believe you.
And that's probably a happy dude, or that sounds like a happy dude.
Yes. I mean, we definitely, from what I understand, the research in science says that we all have an approximate baseline happiness level, which can spike and dip, but that if you, whatever level it's at, if you're miserable and you win the lottery, you'll spike, but then you'll go back to being miserable and rich. And if you're generally good-natured and enjoying life, if you lose your arm, then you'll have maybe a little dip, but then eventually you'll be approximately as happy as you ever were before, because that's who you are.
If I lose my arm, I'm gonna just never acknowledge it, and that's going to be my legacy of like, oh yeah, I didn't notice that. I should go get that checked out.
I like it, and I'd like you to sort of credit me for a joke that I'm not going to do. I don't know, but here's all the ingredients of it. If you lose an arm and don't talk about it, it'll just be your leg I see. That's leg is in the word legacy.
Oh yeah, I got that.
That's I just wanted to the couple times that I've done that on this episode are sort of
what made the joke about the words?
The joke about the words. I like that we've talked for I think what seems to be like almost several hours.
Is it several? What time is it? 6:32. When do you have to go?
Like 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Yeah. Oh yeah, let's like wrap it up then.
So the point is, I think when I started out doing comedy, I did like almost like 99% jokes like that. And
word jokes?
Yeah. Like my first joke was something like the first jokes that I remember telling were about like how Philadelphia used to be called Liberty Bell Town, but they changed it because it didn't have the right ring to it.
Did you get early open mic days? Did you get a lot of like groans, like for like people that do puns or something? They often get like, oh, I see what you did there, like this disappointed, like, oh, I thought it was going to be more, but that is clever, but oh.
I'm sure I did get some, but I think I was just bad at performing also. I think I was getting mostly nothing. I
haven't seen early you, and I'm surprised that I haven't, because I look at I look at weird stand-up. Like, I watch a lot of Australian stand-up. I'll, like, watch the Melbourne Comedy Festival just to hear, like, the nuances of them and their accent and what do they talk about.
I can send you an album that I made, like, a year into comedy.
Oh, you taped an album?
I was still doing music as well, so it's half music. It's, like, 12 tracks of songs, that some of which are funny and some of which aren't, on purpose. And then 12 tracks of, like, a couple minutes of comedy each. So there's probably, like, 24 minutes of comedy and 12 3-minute songs.
Cool.
And some of the jokes would become jokes that I would stay jokes that I did and did better later. But like the audience, it was like taped at an open mic in Boston, like over the course of like 12 weeks.
When you did it, was your mindset like my first album, or was it like I realized that I'm pretty new at this? This is just a show that I can do.
Nope, I was delusional. That was, I think, part of the way that I started my life. I was contributing to my, I think when you start doing comedy, you need some level of delusional confidence.
Oh, yeah. We're all super delusional.
And then it's, there is some kind of, hopefully, fake it till you make it. But at the time, I didn't even know I was faking it. I was just like, this is fun and good. And I think, and I did understand that, it was difficult and you wouldn't always get a reaction when you were starting out. But I definitely never internalized it. I had this one joke that like almost never got a laugh. And I was just like, well, I guess all these audiences just don't get it. And I didn't get it.
There was a guy at the open mics in Austin where I started who killed like twice a year or maybe once a year, but I'll give him credit. Like he killed twice a year on nights where no one else did, and it was like kind of in the lore that like this fed him to keep going, or her, but we all know it's a him. It's a
yes,
and if it's a her,
it's men
like,
that aren't funny.
Yeah, I think it's the what's the it's all out the window now. But I think what was there was like a study a few years ago where women are more intelligent than men, but men have the higher variance. So the highest peak is a man, and the dumbest dumb guy is a man. But it's a stupid thing to measure because intelligence can't be
there are different
measured.
Kinds of intelligence.
And who's making the test? Like maybe the person that's making the test is a man, and then is saying like, okay, these are the
smart man. This is what's important.
Yeah. And that's why it's good to have, because we are all the same and should have the same opportunity, but we do think differently, and not because of phrenology or something, but just culturally we're brought up so differently that of course you're going to think differently.
Have you read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman?
No, is it good?
It's great. I brought a copy of it to lend/give to Zach, and you should get it from him when he's done with it, if that makes sense. Or if
for sure. I lent him my In Praise of Idleness book. Have you read that?
Oh, no, I haven't.
I think because we were talking about, I was bringing up that if you're lazy or you're not productive, you're doing great, as long as if you're not going out killing people, you're not going out hurting people, you're not writing shitty things on the internet, you're doing great. If you just sit there,
first do no harm.
Killing it. Yeah.
If you're not killing it,
and we put so much pressure on productivity and getting the things done. But
that's great.
Yeah, there's like a lot of really bad people that are super productive.
It would be much better to have people just playing golf instead of droning innocence. So
the book,
in Thinking Fast and Slow, I believe it's in that book, there's a part of it where it talks about the counties that have like the highest rate of like certain disease and like the lowest rate of certain disease. I'm gonna get it. The point of it, whatever it is that the larger the population is, then the more variation there's going to be. You'll have, the best of something, like you were just saying, the best of something and the worst of something. So without even, needing to say that men and women or different genders think differently or are, socialized differently, which of course they are. But just the fact that there are more men in comedy than there are women means that you have potentially, more men that have been doing it longer, more men that are never going to be good at it than women. If there's only 3 women and there's 17 men, then the men will have a larger variation.
Yeah, more lottery tickets.
Yes. So the point is, some men should stop doing comedy and more women should start doing comedy and everything. Some men should just stop and more women should go.
They should stop doing it poorly, but I don't think anyone should stop. Because there's infinite space. Like, no, leave this to the musicians, or now it's time for the females to do it. You should sit there. But don't stop doing the thing. But definitely ratio-wise of all the. I said this already in this podcast or the one before, but disclaimer before everything. Like if I'm wrong or I say a bad thing, it doesn't count. Like my heart was in the right place. And disclaimer to all future things too. So I'm covered. I'm completely covered. I can't get in trouble. Everything I say is good. I don't want to be a roast podcast either. I don't want to be like, it's the.
Oh yeah.
I can't sustain the Jeff Ross, Dean Martin roast insult comedy forever, but it is fun sometimes.
Oh yeah, I don't think you have to.
Yeah, I don't think it radiates out of me that much. But anyway, okay, you gotta go. Do I have any questions on here? What scares you? Real quick.
I mean, hurting other people.
Okay, hurting other people. That's Myq Kaplan, everyone. You can catch him tonight at Peachy Keen at Bar Lubitsch in Los Angeles, but you won't because this is taped before that. But any final words before you got to get out of here? This has been a wonderful talk. Thanks for being my second guest on the podcast, and
I'm very glad to sit down with you and do this.
You think it was good? You think it was a good podcast?
It was. I think there was a good balance of give and take, of listening and talking, of respecting. But like that's a thing that I was gonna say is like sometimes I'll be in a conversation with somebody either on a podcast or in real life, and like one person, like if I'm in the middle of something and somebody's like, "Ooh, I want to say a thing," then they'll be like, "I'm sorry to interrupt." I'm like, that's what to me a conversation is, and there can be a give and take, a flow back and forth, where even if I'm glad that now I think I used to be more. Like, I have a plan, and I want to finish everything that I started, and I'm happy to finish the things that I start, but if something else starts, like, you can't finish everything. We can't finish every possible tangent, every possible thread. We can't, all of the, all the ways that the Plinko thing could go down. We can't choose. That's the way I used to read Choose Your Own Adventures. Is like I would try to put my finger in every place where there was a choice and then be like, do I die in this one? Great, I'm going to go back and now not die in this one. But then eventually there's too many choices. You can't do everything, so you have to choose the things that are the most valuable in the exact moment that you're in. And if sometimes it's, learning a new thing, like the thing about the men who had never seen purple and now felt things, like that's a thing that I've really taken from this that I'm going to write down in my journal and be like, I learned that today. I'm not, even if I never look at those videos, which I'm sure I will.
I'm going to send them to you in the next email exchange because we email.
We do. But I just like learning that's a thing that now is a part of me. And that makes me feel tender and, compassionate and things that I like feeling. And then I'm sure that I said things that you said things that I'd never heard. I said things that you'd never heard. We both said things that we ourselves had never heard. And so I think that that's all four things. That's all four quadrants checked off and that appeals to my faux CD tendencies.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much. And
thank you, friend.
Everyone, you can just search for Myq. If you're only listening to audio and you don't see the text, it's MYQ and then Kaplan, as in the last name Kaplan, the SAT class.
That's right.
Kaplan. But yeah, check him out.
Thank you.
Don't write bad things unless I don't know, if you're really, really feeling bad. I guess you can let it out and write the bad things. You can do it. I don't know. I'll fight you though. I'll go on there and fight you on my little.
I won't care. I now like. Anytime a person says a negative thing, it's like the SATs or the GREs now, where, if you have a computer system that I think it's like if you get the question wrong, then the next one is easier and worth less. If you get a question right, the next one is harder and worth more. And so if you say something to me that is hurtful, I'm like, oh, that was the wrong answer. So the next thing that you say is worthless.
Your value structure is unfavorable.
Oh, yeah.
Mine is more favorable than yours, which is the opposite of your value system.
Yes. So you, Ramin, say very nice things, and so everything you say nice things, wise things, kind things, valuable things, interesting things, new things,
quiet
and so
things.
All those things, repetition things, variation things,
repetition things,
variation things. Variation things. And so because I'm always interested in hearing more of the things that you have to say because they're always worth more later.
Well, thank you, man. I love you, brother.
I love
you. Let's do this again soon.
Please.
And signing off. Thanks for joining us, listeners. It means a lot to me. This thing's just getting started, but it's working hard. It's a good thing. You listen to the end and you like it. And
thank you.
All right, yeah. Bye.